What happens after we indulge in pleasure? How's it going, everybody? Hope you're having a great day so far. My name is Thomas, and I do videos on educational matters on this channel. And right now, we are in the middle of 144 different videos on different aspects of the tree of life. And if you'd like kind of a program of all 144 videos so you can just keep track, because I'm not rolling them out in order, but if you want them kind of placed in order, just click the link in the description and I'll send you out a list so that you can kind of keep track a little bit better at home. But again, we're going through the 144 different mini aspects of the tree of life. And if you wonder what the tree of life is, this is the diagram, and it's a piece of sacred geometry. The configuration of the diagram is important, and the different circles or spheres here are important. This is really, it goes back all the way to ancient Egypt, if not before. The ancient Hebrews used it, and then also the early modern and modern Hebrews have used it. Satanists use it nowadays quite a bit. When we learn it here, we can use it in order to defend ourselves from the Satanist attacks. And we can also learn to propagate it for good intentions as well as bad. Now, what this is basically like a map of our faculties of consciousness, or a map of our aspects of consciousness. And I think it's important because what it does is it gives you like a meta organizing system that you can put into your, metaphorically put into your head. And it helps you to organize your thinking, not just about the tree of life, but about everything. And that's how I experienced it. I learned the tree and couldn't quite figure it out for a while, but eventually it just clicked in. Kind of once I had it memorized, I had the structure memorized and I had all the functions memorized, not to a great detail, but just enough to be really familiar with it. And then it kind of just downloaded into my head, and all the other stuff that I had been mulling over for many years, studying spirituality and esotericism and psychedelics and consciousness studies and space and time physics, all that stuff just kind of sorted itself out in my head with the help of the tree of life. And so it really helped me in terms of especially memory, being able to like put things into perspective and to be able to remember where they are. It's kind of like a, Aleister Crowley, the great Satanist, described it as a mystical filing cabinet. And that's more or less what it is. It's something that you can put things into, and then you know just where to find them. Okay, so that's why I really like to teach Tree of Life, is because it's a tool that you can use. Again, it's a tool that can be used for good or evil, but if you have good intentions, you can use it to really help you on your path, especially if you're embarking on a spiritual path. By being able to just put things into perspective and to be able to remember them and recall them when you need them. Okay, now the tree, as you can see, has 10 different circles or spheres that are numbered: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Then there is an applied sphere here called the abyss, dotted line or dotted circle. And then there's a 0 above the tree. So that's a total of 12 different components, or really 12 aspects of consciousness. Now, when I get to the 144 aspects, what I'm basically doing is I'm fractalizing the whole model. So I'm taking the whole tree all 12 of the different categories, and I'm putting it on each one of the categories. So I'm breaking down each one of the 12 categories into its 12 components. And if I really wanted to, I could do that again and break it down, to get 1,728 different categories. And I could break it down again, and I would arrive at 20,736 different categories. But I think that's kind of over our head at this point, and maybe someday in the distant future somebody might do something like that. But right now I think 12 is enough for beginners, and 144 is enough for people who want to go a little bit deeper and get into advanced levels. Okay, so now I'm going to just describe what each one of the spheres is about briefly. The 10th sphere is our wild animal consciousness. So this is like survival of the fittest. This is fight or flight response, kill or be killed, state of nature, also the automatic survival responses of the body, such as being able to digest food, being able to keep your heart beating, being able to eliminate waste, all these different things that we don't direct voluntarily, but that they happen anyway. And in fact, we can do a negative 10th sphere by defiling ourselves or having lusts that inhibit that life force. So our life force acts automatically, but we can volunteer, or we can voluntarily inhibit that life force through our actions. So what we have to do is be able to restrict that. Okay, now the 9th sphere is really where the 10th sphere is like our wild animal. This is really like our domesticated animal. So this is our domestic consciousness that we're picking up in the first few years of our lives, growing up in the home. We are super highly receptive to our environment. We're soaking up everything like a sponge. Everything is fascinating. We have rapt attention about just the most mundane little things. And we also pay attention really strongly to our caregivers and our parents and other influences in the home. And we basically watch what they do, and then we imitate what they do. And then we practice that imitation over and over until we get it. And then we memorize it. So that's kind of the learning cycle that we go on in this 9th sphere. Main problem is that it's blind. The 9th sphere is blind, so it doesn't matter whether we're picking up good or evil influences or good or bad influences from those caregivers. We're still going to copy it, memorize it, and learn it. And that's similar to the 8th sphere. The 8th sphere is quite blind also, but the 8th sphere, where the 9th sphere is about the domestic consciousness, the 8th sphere is about the public consciousness, or what you call the conventional wisdom, the expert opinion, the consensus worldview. And this is where all the institutions are, all the resources are here, all the establishment is here, the powers that be, and they tell us what we're supposed to believe in and how we're supposed to behave. And so when we believe what they believe or what they tell us, and that's the problem with the 8th sphere, is that it's to a great deal, it's a trickster. And so what they tell us to believe, they don't really believe it themselves. They tell us what to believe in order to control us. And so when we accept their beliefs about things, we gain access into this 8th sphere. We become like minor spokespeople in the 8th sphere. We get we get into the best schools, we get the best grades on the test, we get into the best schools, we get the best jobs, and then we become a minor spokesperson for the 8th sphere, and we tell other people what they should believe, even though we might not believe it completely ourselves, because most of the time it contradicts with our own experience. And that's the tension that we have here, is we have our own experience, but what they're telling us to believe is not always in harmony with that experience. And that creates this ambivalence, which a lot of times we resolve with rationalization or other kind of circular reasoning or other faulty components of reasoning. Okay, so the A sphere, the faculties here are really our belief systems and our logical faculty. But most of the time, the A sphere is inverted. And you can see with the A sphere, when you invert 8, you still have 8. You know, so that the inversion of the A sphere looks exactly the same as the real A sphere. So it's very difficult to tell what is real and what isn't. And so when we rationalize something, what we do is we have our own experiences, but they're telling us to believe this, and so we dismiss our own experience in favor of this, and we come up with excuses to justify their point of view in order to fit in better, because this is also the consensus. So we kind of have this false belief that everybody is in here. Certainly everybody who is somebody is in here, and so we have to kind of kowtow to it. But that's not the case. And if we actually re-invert or put aright the 8, we recognize that it's just part of the path. You know, it's not an end point. It's something that we pick up. We pick up our logical reasoning and belief systems, and then we move on. We continue to evolve, and then when we move to the 7th, we end up where the A sphere is like the real world. The 7th sphere is the imaginary world. And so the 7th sphere is what we imagine that the A sphere could be. We sniffed the problems with the A sphere. We smelled a rat, and that was a rationalization. And we smelled the rat, and so we bailed on the A sphere and kept up with our logical progression to move to the 7th sphere, where we imagined this being better. And so at the 7th sphere, we use the faculties of the 7th sphere to propose alternatives to the A sphere. And those are not only our imagination, also our inspiration, being able to follow the path, stand on the shoulders of other people that have come before us, that have inspired us, and to intuit what we perceive, what is true, by just wondering and asking the question internally, and then going inside and getting that communication. Also, our creativity, our spark of creativity, is from the 7th sphere, and our pleasure principle, being able to put things into pleasing arrangements. And so we use the 7th sphere to come up with creative alternatives to the A sphere, such as songs or paintings or inventions or other intellectual property that sheds light on some of the fallacies of the A sphere. Okay, then using our inspiration, we can move further up the tree to the 6th sphere, where we discover that this is where we are already. The 6th sphere is our essence, and it's our free will faculty. This is our ability to boil it down, to pay attention, and our ability to make decisions. Okay, but what we find is that, paying attention is a vector function. It has a direction. You pay attention to something. So your paying attention has a direction, and that is normally directed toward 8th, 9th, and 10th spheres, and to a limited extent the 7th sphere. So we generally pay attention down the tree, because this is our comfort zone. This is what we grew up with. These are all our memories, and all, this is what we're accustomed to. And so we pay attention to it. There's nothing else to pay attention to. But at the 6th sphere, we recognize that we can, because again, the other part of free will is making decisions. And so we decide that we're going to pay attention to our higher aspects, even though these things are not fleshed out. It's mostly unknown compared to this. So this is a scary prospect, to face the unknown as opposed to the comfortable. But this is how we evolve spiritually. And so this is a big move, to turn ourselves around and point our attention to the top of the tree. Now, the first place that we point then is the fifth sphere. And this fifth sphere is really, it's the enforcement of the natural law or the natural order of things. You can also think of it as our sense of justice. This is how we can tune into becoming a just person. And this is also known as karma. And that is, what comes around goes around. As you sow, so shall you reap. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's a boomerang effect. What we put in is what we get out. And so we can think of this as like a mirror, and we put in an action. Karma weighs our action based on violence, violation, and waste. And so if we are violating somebody, we get that back to us. If we are wasting something, we get that back to us. If we are paying attention, we recognize that the feedback we're getting is not the best. And we recognize that, what I'm putting in is what I'm getting out. And what I'm getting out, I'm not happy with. So what I'm putting in is not satisfactory. And so I need to clean up my behavior. I need to just make my behavior more just, so that I can get back more positive feedback. So this is a way to use karma as a teacher, in order to help you, eliminate your karma. Now, the fourth sphere is the opposite, or the counterpart of the fifth sphere, where the fifth sphere is about the enforcement of the natural law or order of things. The fourth sphere is about the articulation of the natural order of things, or the universal law. And this is what you would call cosmology, or ancient holy books. Any book or other media that purports to describe how everything works in the world. Who is God? Who are we? What's our relationship with God? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of the whole thing? All these different questions, all the big questions in life are answered by a good cosmology. Now, that doesn't mean that the answers are all correct, but the answers are based on long-term observation by many, many people probably in a whole civilization or whatever. And there are many different cosmologies, and your best bet is probably to study as many of them as you can, and to compare and contrast them, and then to compare and contrast them with your own experience, and then to use your intuition, to elevate your intuition to this higher level, where you are able to it's called scientific insight, to be able to take all of those different teachings and kind of mull them around and figure out what is the composite that makes sense to you. This is also other universal things like universal love, being able to love your enemies, give seeking nothing in return, and then also universal languages that are innate, that you don't need to have instruction to understand or to articulate. Okay, then the psychic powers is the abyss. The abyss right here corresponds to our psychic powers. We have two main psychic powers: psychic receptivity and psychic heat. Psychic receptivity is your ability to be able to tune into and recognize omens, or synchronicities, or uncanninesses, or improbabilities, things that happen that are really weird, but that they kind of stick out in your mind. You can't dismiss those. You recognize that those things are important for you to kind of follow up on. And to being following up on them is the psychic heat part of it. So usually the omen will give you the path of following up. And if you can take that path, which requires courage again, because it requires you to put yourself out there and to do something that is kind of, going to arouse attention of other people, then then you're activating your psychic heat. Okay, now 3, 2, and 1 at the top of the tree are really our divine faculties within. Here we have our omnipotence, here is omniscience, and here is omnipresence. All powerful, all knowing, and all at once, everywhere, everything. Okay, we tap into the third sphere through sound, we tap into the second sphere through sight, and we tap into the first sphere through being. And, this is really mantra, and this is also like our mission in life, a culmination of our mission in life. And then this is wisdom, our ability to solve problems. And this is unification, our ability to be at one-ment or atonement. And then the 0 above the tree is our mystery and the nothingness of the world. And this nothingness, there is no nothingness in the universe. This nothingness is not in the universe, but it is part of the Creator. The Creator has a double life, so to speak, outside the universe, and that is the 0. And that's something that we only have direct access to, indirect access to. Okay, so that is the 12 different categories that comprise the basic teachings of the Tree of Life. Again, if we want to go a little bit deeper on those teachings, then we put the 12 onto each one of the 12 to blow it up to 144 different minor aspects. And I've done that for the purposes of pedagogy, basically, to provide a model that helps us learn the 12 better, like learn the 12 in depth that way. And again, you can click the link in the description if you'd like me to send you a free copy of that guide to the 144 fractal faculties. Now, in these videos, I've been presenting one of the 144 in each video. And today we're looking at number 37. What happens after we indulge in pleasure? And so you might guess that just from what I presented, that this is located in the 7th sphere, because that corresponds to pleasure. And that is correct. So this is a 7th sphere aspect, but it also incorporates the 10th sphere. So we're really at the bottom of the 7th sphere, in the 10th aspect of the 7th sphere. And so the 10th sphere is about, the lusts of the body, the defilements of the body, the state of nature, survival instinct. And the 7th sphere is about pleasure principle, imagination, creativity. So this particular aspect is going to be a kind of a combination of those. And it is called and then we all got fat and at risk for heart attacks. Stage number 37 is about instant gratification and avoiding its negative externalities. Pleasure wears off and gives way to, or becomes, longing for that pleasure. Trial and success. We got a pleasant little buzz, but it is fleeting and elusive. And now we want to repeat it. Youth covers up a lot of damage, but years later, we get back together, we reunite, we look back, we wax all nostalgic. Somehow, our retrospectives we're missing the painful memories and results. Free from all the negative externalities, when we look in the mirror or at the reunion photos, what we see is that the bottom line was that in the end, we all got soft, we all got fat, and at risk for heart attacks. Pleasure is not the point of life, but neither is pain and suffering. Seek the middle way, which works out to be only minimal indulgence. So-called moderation is aiming us, directing us way too high, way too much. Aim not at the center, but all the way to the right of the brain. The middle way is minimal, really. But the answer is not to deny ourselves from pleasure. Asceticism is another form of indulgence that tends to be self-righteous. Instead, try the middle way, but keep in mind that the middle way is minimal, not moderate. Use this principle to successfully navigate the hazards of gluttony and asceticism or martyrdom. Fresh pleasure, enjoy it with no need to feel guilty. But then, as soon as it's over, after minimal indulgence, let it go and don't force the experience to repeat. Or else place the pleasure into a sanctified, into a ritualized context to avoid morbidity. And take periodic hiatuses from our regular pleasures, sabbaticals. Experiencing pleasure is a skill, so honor it as such. All right, that is number 37, the 10th fractal of the 7th sphere. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. You can click the like button if you are so inclined. You can share the video with others. You can subscribe to the channel. You can click the link in the description to get a free copy of my guide to the 144 fractal faculties. And you can donate if you feel generous via Cash App or Venmo, which are listed in the description. I will be rolling out another one of the 144 different fractal faculties tomorrow in the video, and so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, have a beautiful day. We'll see you tomorrow.